is a weird event that happened to you?
Oh man, ton of weird events. Like, in my opinion, the coolest thing that happened to me. I'll give you that. You want that?
Yeah.
So I made a run one night, and it was in. They weren't full blown projects, but they were subsidized housing, and they were like 8 unit complexes all around. And got a call of a possible domestic. They heard somebody screaming. So I show up. I go up to the door. My partner wasn't there yet. I hear a lady inside screaming. I bang on the door. She screams. I kick the door in. She is in the middle of us getting stranger raped. There's a stranger broke into her house, climbed through the window, and was raping her. So I chased the guy through the window, ended up catching him down the street. He got like 12 years in prison. But just the things that you envision being a police officer, that this is why I do what I do. That was one of the times it actually came to fruition. And it was like, man, I didn't stop the rape, but I was at least there to break it up and catch the guy and put him in prison. So that's kind of the coolest thing, I believe. I mean, there's been a ton of stuff. I've forgotten more probably than I could even tell you.
Welcome to Game of Crimes.
Welcome, everybody. This is the first episode of 2023 for Murph and Morgan Game of Crimes. Actually, and as we're looking at the episode list now, remember, if you guys survived December with us, we took December off. We appreciate you guys hanging with us.
Yes.
We technically ended on episode 78, which was Dan Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
And then this will actually be episode 79. The other ones were bonus episodes, so we don't count those in our episode list. So this will be episode 79. And we told you we were going to start off the new year with a bang. And Murph, you were actually able to set this one up for us. But before we talk about, so you've taken a breath, but before we talk about it, let's hop into the rest of the stuff. But first of all, we want to welcome you guys back. Thank you for letting us take a break for a month. We really needed it, had a lot of stuff to do. And just having put out stuff every month, including Patreon, it was kind of like we needed to recharge and work on some things. So are you recharged, Murph, or you sound like you're still convalescing there?
Oh man, I tell you what, I got some kind of sinus thing going at Thanksgiving, and it took a while to get over it. And I thought I was over it, and it's hit me again here at Christmas. So if you hear me coughing, sniffing, snotting, I apologize to you up front. I'll try and hit the mute button as much as I can here.
Hey, but first of all, we hope everybody had a Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah. And then also that you guys had a great New Year's. Hope everybody stayed safe. That's the goal. Stay safe. Get home. And we want to thank you guys again for joining us. We're going to start out like we normally do. Hey, go over to Apple, hit those 5 stars. It really helps us out a lot. Also, Spotify has it now, so hit those 5 stars there. Also, head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. The guest we have on today has a book that comes out. You got to read it. This episode is very compelling, so you're going to have to do that. Also, follow us on social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. And also make sure you also go over to Game of Crimes Fans and deal with our favorite mafia queen, Sandy Salvato. Just answer a couple questions, get in the ballpark, and join not only the main page, but the fan group. That's where the fun stuff happens, right, Murph?
Oh, absolutely. And it's, let me tell you, the questions that she asked, if I can pass it, you can pass it. So come over and give us a shot. There's a lot of funny stuff on there that our followers there, the members of the club are
Play us.
They're very
Engaging.
comical. Yeah.
Yes, engaging.
They put some good stuff on there.
Yes. And then this year, we're going to change it around because I'll tell you where you got to be. And Morgan, where do you have to be? Well, Morgan, thanks for asking, Murph. Where do we have to be?
Where do we have to be, Morgan?
Yeah, you got to be on Patreon, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We're going to be changing some things up this coming year. You're still going to get the same amount of content, but we've been doing some things for a while. So Murph and I are going to have a talk. We've been doing 911, what's your emergency? That by the time you hear this, that will have come out on the 1st. And we talk about a very interesting case there. But we'll be looking at mixing up some things, still giving you content, but we want to keep taking this to the next level. So head on over to patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We have a ton of stuff there. I mean, everything you need to hear about. We do our case of the month. We do our narco meter. We do our monthly Q&A. We've got all of our bonus episodes. By the way, your bonus episode, if you were a member of a Guardian of the Realm or Warden of the Throne level, your bonus episode for Narcos, the Real DA Narcos on the Real DA Narcos Cali edition, was Chris Feistel taking one for the team.
And if you want to know what that means, you got to come on to Patreon and check it out.
Go to patreon.com/Game of Crime, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. One more time, that's patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Here's how to order. So just make sure you head on over there. And remember, guys, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We take the story seriously, but what, Murph? What's our standard disclaimer?
We never take ourselves seriously. This is too much fun. It's serious topics that we discuss, but we're going to have some fun while we talk about it.
And one of the fun things we do, it's we tell stories from around the U.S., around the globe. So, Murph, guess what time it is? Guess what time it is? Guess what time it is? What time is it?
It must be time for Small Town Police Blotter.
And we saved a couple of these stories, and this first one comes to us from Steve, not Stephen King. That's Steve, not Stephen King. And it's about a Pennsylvania man, Murph.
Okay.
You ever had, people do some strange things, like they get on PCP, right? They always strip and they get naked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is September. You're at a gas station in Ephrata Township, Pennsylvania, very small area. Jonathan Beck decided he would, guess what, strip down while he was pumping gas.
Well,
so
he's never done that?
Well, it's not what he did there. It's what he did afterwards.
Uh-oh.
After removing his clothes and exposing himself to other patrons, Beck got inside the bagged ice freezer outside of the store.
Oh. Did that suffer shrinkage?
Shrinkage.
Oh.
Guess what, Murph? You're going to be surprised at the charges.
What you got?
Indecent exposure, criminal mischief, public drunkenness, and possession of marijuana.
Oh, wow.
Somehow I
meth,
knew...
Huh?
Not meth, but rule number one, kids, don't do meth. Rule number two, if you're going to do marijuana, if it's legal in your state or Commonwealth, is what Pennsylvania is, do it at home and don't do it inside the bagged ice freezer outside the store.
So, but I'm sure afterwards the store or whatever branch it was went out and emptied out the entire ice container, put in new bags, right?
I would have burned that ice container down. I just wouldn't have thrown out the ice. It's like, I don't know what you got, son, but whatever it is not getting onto my ice.
Oh, my gosh. You can't make this shit up. Oh, that's one of our Patreon sessions, isn't it?
You can't make this shit up. Anyway, so, Steve, we know that around this time of year, tensions run high in families, right? Some jealousy. Relationships kind of take an impact sometimes, right? So if you're dating and if you've got a boyfriend, a girlfriend, there might be some tension there. You might get jealous, right? So, Steve, I mean, I don't know if you've ever been jealous, but if you were, or if a girl was jealous about you, I don't know that she would get to the point of where she would burn your home down.
Oh, Lord. I hope not.
But it's not what you think.
Okay.
A woman, Seneda Soto, was arrested after she set fire to her boyfriend's house during a jealous rage after discovering another woman had answered their FaceTime call. However, I see you're jumping to conclusions.
Uh-huh.
The mystery female was the boyfriend's relative.
Oh.
She was taken into custody, faces felony charges for burglary and arson. The bizarre ordeal happened on Sunday when Soto became enraged that her beau may have been two-timing her, broke into his San Antonio home. I don't know why. Where was JP? Where he could have prevented. Maybe it was JP. I don't know. Oh, my God.
Oh, no, not JP.
Not JP.
Not JP.
Broke into his San Antonio home, stole some items before setting a couch on fire that spread, causing the house to become engulfed in flames. As the house was burning, you know what she did? She FaceTimed her lover showing an image of the burning couch. So it's kind of like, hey, here's what you get. She goes, I hope your stuff is going to be okay, she said before driving off in her gray Kia Optima. I don't know why they needed that just driving off in her car.
Mm-hmm.
The person who has on the FaceTime call, who hasn't been revealed, turned out to be a relative of the friend, and it's called Bear County. You'll see it down in Texas. It's spelled B-X-B-E-X-A-R, but it's called Bear County, not Bexar County for some of you folks out there. The Bear County Fire's Office responded there. Video footage captures Soto lighting the couch, on fire. A laundry basket is filled with clothes. The scene toppled over. The fire caused hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages.
Well, I hope she realizes that she does not have a career in crime in her future if everything's on videotape. But the big question is, did he forgive her?
Well, Murph, first of all, you just dated yourself. Nobody records on videotape anymore.
All right. Figure of speech.
Figure of speech. Well, hey, I don't know, but she has a pretrial hearing set in December. All of these things happened in November or December. All of these things we're telling you about, folks, happened within the last couple, 3-4 weeks. So, Steve.
Unbelievable.
Florida man.
Hey, all right. Here we go, Florida.
Florida man. Guess what?
What?
Florida man said, wait till you find out what he did. But first of all, he says he does stupid things when getting drunk. There's kind of an understatement, right?
If you know you're going to do it, why do you continue to do it there, dumbass?
So the incident happened just before 5 p.m. on Wednesday, December 9th, or around that time, according to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office. Do you know where Hernando County is?
No. I have to look that one up.
You look that one up. This guy's name is Thomas Tarduno, T squared, double T, T2. T2 told detectives he was drinking at a bar in Spring Gill, Florida, walked out shortly before 4:30 p.m. When he was walking, the man saw a patrol vehicle and decided he'd like to set it on fire. He got a bag of garbage from a dumpster, placed it under the patrol car, and lit the trash on fire.
Well, if he's lighting the trash, he should have got in.
Yeah, but I will give him credit for a little bit. After setting the patrol car on fire, he went back to the bar, but later returned to the crime scene to confess because, quote, he felt bad. He told deputies that he was intoxicated at the time and does stupid things when he's drunk.
Duh. And I looked it up. It's due west of Orlando, of Orange County. It's on the coast north of Tampa. And please stay over there, jackass. Don't come over here. We got enough loonies as it is.
Officials say that Tarduno was cooperative with deputies and said he was a professional arsonist who had been convicted of similar crimes, but said he didn't target the patrol car and claimed he would have set fire to any car in the location.
Well, I wonder how you interview for a job like that. I'm a professional arsonist.
I'm a PA, physician's assistant. No, professional arsonist.
He's a DA, a professional dumbass.
Yeah, well, that kind of reminds me to a guy who used to hand out a card, and it said like Bob Smith, DDS, and you go, "What are you, a dentist? Like doctor of dental science?" No, door-to-door salesman. But it got him into a lot of places. Hand the card, DDS. No, door-to-door salesman. Anyway, thus endeth the reading for today. P.A.S. Domine Daneus Requiem. That is our first set of stories for this year. And you know what we might be doing too? Let's throw it out there. Do you like Small Town Police Blotter? Do you want us to focus on other stories? Do a different section? So just seriously, go to the website. Actually, go to the Facebook fan page and the fan group. If you're one of the cool kids that are in the fan group that have passed the entry test administered by Sandy Salvato, our mafia queen, just give us some feedback. What we're looking for is we are kicking off this year. We're going to be making some changes on the back end. You may not realize for a while, we're actually talking to a new company we want to host with. And it sounds promising so far. But as with anything, just give us your feedback. Let us know what you think.
Exactly. This is all about you guys. I mean, we love to bring the special guests on here. The comments you send us are fantastic. You love hearing the long form. You love hearing the inside story, like the personal touch that our interviews bring out. So this is all about what you want to hear. So if you don't tell us what you want, you're going to continue to get the same thing. Right?
That sounds like a threat. Y'all ate these carrots and y'all love them, kid.
Damn right.
All right. Well, hey, let's talk about this one. Let's set up the episode a little bit because you actually did the outreach on this. And this one, as we said when we kind of teased this out, it made national headlines. Protests happened. A lot of bad things happened around it. But Steve, as with anything, I learned so much from our next guest. I learned so much from the story that was never presented on the news. And that's the key thing. I mean, one of the key things, you set it up, but let me throw this. We talk about this 3.5 hours of an interview, and they only used 5 minutes. And the 5 minutes they used was done in such a way to make this next guy look bad.
Yeah, it was terrible. And the shout out to our friend Wayne Stinnett out in Oklahoma, who made this introduction for us. John Mattingly is our guest. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of John Mattingly until Wayne told me about him. in doing some research, we've all heard of the Breonna Taylor case in Louisville, Kentucky, where the police conducted a search warrant on an apartment and she was inadvertently killed. And we are so sorry to her family for what happened out there. But the media is to blame for this because they didn't reveal all the information. It was extremely one-sided towards against the police. And John Mattingly is the only person other than Breonna who was injured throughout. He's the first police officer that was shot. He was the first person shot in this entire incident. And I'm just hesitating here because I just want to go into the story and tell the whole thing. But John's going to tell you a story, so I'm not
Yep.
going to waste your time here.
Well, let's, and it gets emotional, but look, folks, I'm telling you right now, what you heard on the news is not the story. And to hear
Right.
the story and to hear it from John and to hear the first person account of what went on, why it happened, and how it happened, I think it's going to change your view of what happened in the case. Were mistakes made? As with any, there's no operation is perfect. Mistakes are always made. But the question is, what were the mistakes the way they portrayed them in the media, or were they far different than what was portrayed and what impact they actually had on the whole thing? So, hey, let me ask you this, Murph. Before we find out the rest of the story, we have to get to the rest of the story. So, do you
Right.
want to hear the rest of the story?
Absolutely. And wait till you hear, and I should have said this before, I apologize, I didn't. Wait till you hear the aftermath of what John and his family are continuing to go through. I mean, this is horrible. It's horrible what happened. Everything that happened in this story is horrible. But here you're going to hear the truth.
So, Murph, let's do it. Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes?
To all our listeners in 2023, you know what I'm getting ready to say. Get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. You got to hear this story and let us know what you think.
Well, hey, guys. Dudes, dudettes, players, playerettes, everybody in between, amigos, amigas. Hey, we told you we were going to kick off January with some very impactful interviews, and Murph has done a great job lining up this next one. This is a case that has obviously captured the national attention, the headlines. But as we always say, there's two sides to every story. And what we do here is we get the sides of the story. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this case. It's the Breonna Taylor case. But more importantly, we want to get the law enforcement side of it. And so who we brought and who Murph found, he wrote a book, Sergeant John Mattingly. It's called 12 Seconds in the Dark, a police officer's firsthand account of the Breonna Taylor raid. And look, I got to tell you, man, again, it's an honor to have you on. So, hey, everybody, let's welcome to Game of Crimes, Sergeant John Mattingly.
Woo-hoo.
It's good to be here, Murph. Good to be here,
Yeah.
Morgan.
You may not say that when we finish
Yeah,
with you.
you say that now. Wait till you get to know us, as
I'll
we
bring
say.
it on.
Hey, look, I wanted to lead off with the book because you wrote a book about this whole thing, and I just want to use that to book into it. I don't want to get into it yet. I just want to let people know that's out there, and that's what we're going to be talking about. But as we do with everybody, look, I think for people to understand this, I mean, I think you had 21 years in, right? With the PD?
Yes.
So, but how, we always say Cosa Nostra, thing of ours. How did you get started in this thing of ours? I mean, you take a bet one night, end up in your underwear in front of a police station, raising your right hand. What was the deal?
It was almost that good. No, I was raised in a very poor neighborhood in Louisville. It's called the Portland area. It's right there by our West End, very urban. So very diverse, very crime laden. And growing up, man, I just saw so much injustice on the streets that it just rubbed me wrong. My dad was a pastor, so I saw him in the community. We had bus routes that went all over the communities in Louisville and picked up the unfortunate kids and brought them to church. And on top of that, I would be at the store seeing the drug dealers, and they would hand off stuff to 12, 13, 14-year-old kids who had nothing at home, no electricity, no water, no anything, but yet they had Jordans on and hundreds in their pockets. And I just saw them using these kids, and I saw the old people get just abused in that neighborhood. And all that lit a fire in me that said, man, I don't want to be on that side of history. I want to be on the side that tries to help. And I was honestly, I feel like we joke around, why'd you get in this industry? And it's like, oh, to help people. But that's kind of the catchphrase everybody says. But that was a legit feeling in my heart growing up that, number one, police are cool. You know, when you're a kid, you either want to be a police, fireman, or military.
I know. Don't say fireman. Nobody wants to be a fireman and hang out in a frickin' place and eat and
Well,
sleep,
before you
24/7.
know any better, when you're ignorant, that's
There you
what you
go.
think.
Before you know any better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
once you work with them, you understand. But they can cook. I'll give them that. So so that was just my heart. You know, just I saw the injustices and want to do something about it.
Let me ask you a clarifying question here because I've been to Louisville many, many times. Is it called 4th Street Station?
Which
It's
no, there's something called Fourth Street Live, and that's
4th Street
just
Live. That's what I
yeah,
mean. Yeah.
that's the area that has the bars and the downtown. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a problem area, but not I did not cause any problems down there, but I did learn something, and in fact,
Right.
one of the hotels I stayed at had a sign said there's only 7 proper ways to say Louisville, and Louisville is not one of them. Can you
No,
confirm that?
that's 100% confirmed. Even though we came from King Louis over in France, we've separated from them.
Yeah, because I thought it was Louisville, like Louisville, but there was no such thing as Louisville.
No, no. If
All
if
right.
you pronounce it Louisville, we know you're not from Louisville.
And whatever you do, don't call it Louisville.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Louisville.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not in Texas either.
So, how old were you when? You were going through high school. How old were you when you took your first step towards getting into this thing of ours?
Well, it's funny you say that. When I was 21, I took the police test, and back then, 4,000 people were taking these tests trying to get on departments because it was a job that was desired. It was a career that
What
was
year was that?
that was let's see, 90, 93, 94. It was 94. I took it.
You're a frickin' youngster. You're a
Hey, what a young puppy
kid.
Man, I'm
out here
hitting
is
50 next month. I feel old. But so when I took the test, I made it to the next level. And my wife at the time was like, no, 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 no. I don't want you to be a police officer. You know, they all get divorced. They all do this, they that. And so I put it off. And then in 97 or 99, I took the test again. I said, it's been 5 years. This is still what I want to do with my life. I was a manager at a Thornton's gas station at the time and just unfulfilling. And I said, this is what I want to do. And so I took the test again. I got on. Now, my first wife was correct. 3 years later, we split up, but had nothing to do with police work. And she just had it in her mind that if you become a cop, you're getting divorced because there's such a high divorce rate. So um, I took that in 2000. I came on in 2000 and was sworn in October of 2000. So it's been a great career, fun ride.
So you gave up free hot burritos at the gas station to become a cop?
Yes,
bean
and at the
burritos.
time, I had 3 kids at the time, right? And so they would come in and there's like the big used to be the big candy section in the middle where you got the gumballs out by the weight or the licorice
Yeah.
or whatever. Man, they would just tear that up. So they missed that perk, but the pay was much it's weird to say, but the pay was actually better on the police department than it was at Thornton's.
Yeah, well, no kidding. So when you got on, let's talk a little bit about Louisville because you guys are more of a metro area and a metro police department, right?
Correct. Now we weren't until 2003. 2003
That's
is
what I
when
was
we
going to say.
merged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You got that was you had a merge because I remember talking to some folks about that. Tell us about the area though. Tell us about the county. Tell us about Louisville, population wise. Things like that.
Yeah, so we've got a little over 1 million people, according to the census. I think that's including the metro area, the entire encompass of it. In the inner city part, there's about 650,000 people, and that used to be the old Louisville Police Department before we merged in 2003 with Jefferson County. Your outskirts are typically your suburban areas. Our east end is the kind of rich area of town, and then you've got the west end, which is the urban area, which was encompassed most of the city policing, and that's a very poor neighborhoods, run down, very high in crime. In 2021, we had 186 homicides and over 800 shootings. So for a city of our size, we have quite a large crime rate.
What prompted them? Budget's always an issue, right? But when you were there, what were you guys told is the reason for the merger? And tell us how did that go? You're merging two departments. There's got to be a lot of upheaval, and who's doing what and who's on first, kind of stuff.
Man, there was a huge division for years, the old city guys versus the old county guys. Now, I'd only been on for 3 years, so it didn't really make that much of a difference to me, even though I grew up in Louisville and I wanted to be a city cop, not a county cop, because I thought the county cops didn't do much. And I wanted the action. But so there was a lot of division within the ranks there as far as, well, I was city, I was county. And it seems like any other thing in life that governments run by, they took the worst from each department instead of the best. It could have been awesome. The things you looked at were like, man, we need this, we need that. And they looked at us and said, we need this and that. And we got the total opposite. Um, we got rid of our white stripe, and they said they got a Santa Claus belt buckle the way our belts were. So there was a lot of it. It didn't, I don't think the promises that the city made ever panned out. A lot of you're going to benefit, and that never really took place.
What was the driver for the consolidation, though? What was the reasoning that you guys were given for consolidating the two departments?
Well, they just said it would be more efficient. They said,
Government and efficient in the
yeah,
same
it doesn't
sentence,
go together.
please.
But
Yeah.
it's still divided. Here we are, 18 years later, and if you live within the old city limits, your trash is free. If you live in the county area, you've got to pay for your trash service. So it's some weird divisive stuff still going on that they never really merged everything. I think they just brought all the money together so the politicians could have more personally. But yeah, they said it would be more efficient, and it's been anything but.
When you were finally consolidated, how big was the department then?
It's about 1,300.
And what were you doing at the time? So when you got on, let's talk. Let's kind of rewind a little bit and talk about when you first got on. How does do you guys? I take it with somebody your size, you probably had your own academy.
Yeah, we did. We're the only department in the state that has our own academy. The rest go to Eastern Kentucky and do it there.
Even Lexington doesn't have a department. I
No,
mean, an academy. Wow.
not unless they've changed it since then. No.
Wow. So you guys had your own academy. What was it like? How long was it? Did you stay there? Did you go home? What was it? What'd you guys do?
No, we were fortunate and able to go home. We weren't like the state police where those poor guys had to, military type stuff and woke up in the middle of the night and all that craziness. I guess that's why they're so squared away,
Well,
though.
that's right. You're damn right, Murph. See, Murph, what I tell you? Damn.
Well, no, now we're talking about Kentucky State Police.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kansas starts with K too, so don't worry.
K2. What does K2 mean? Synthetic.
K2 is
What
a
is that?
mountain.
That's K2 is synthetic marijuana.
KY was Dave Mitchell, yes, the Cali cartel. We called him the KY Colonel. He was a Kentucky Colonel. And I said,
Oh,
"Oh, so you're the KY Colonel," and then that nickname stuck with him. So
better than
anyway,
KY
yeah.
jelly, I guess.
first digression. You guys can go ahead and drink. So how long was your academy?
It was 20 weeks. We did get to go home at the end of the night. And then once we got out, our field training was 32 weeks. So it was a total of a year.
Wow. What was
Wow.
the best part about the academy for you? What'd you like the best?
Getting out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leaving. Yeah.
So fortunately, I went in when I was 27 and I'd already experienced life. I had 3 kids. So I had a different mindset than a lot of the younger guys that were there. They were, and I don't want to say I didn't take it serious, but I went in knowing they can't hurt you. They can't put their hand, they can yell all they want, but they're not going to eat me. So I had the mentality of, well, I'm smart enough to pass all this stuff easily because it's on like a 10th grade level, I believe is what it was. Didn't have to study for any of this stuff. It was crazy. And I saw people fail in tests. I'm scratching my head going, man, this is so easy. How are you missing this stuff?
Well, just a
Um,
good indicator they didn't belong there.
yeah, you got that right. But then, I probably my favorite part was, it had to be shooting the
For
shotgun
everybody.
courses for a week or 2 weeks and our pistol for a week. That was the best times.
Oh, that's all the weapons training you got?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Because they were that good, Murph. You got to remember this. We're going back to the Kentucky, going back to the Revolutionary War and Daniel Boone and guys like that. That the
I got
original. I believe the original snipers came from Kentucky.
I've got kinfolk down that way, so good people in Kentucky.
I think they were just cheap and didn't want to give us any more ammo, but
That's probably the truth.
We were trying to make this sound sexy. Come on. But you get out. So, what was training like for you? How did they break the city up? How did they assign you guys? And to turn because that was my training program on the state patrol. It took basically a little over a year from the time we got into the academy till the time we were out on our own.
yeah. So we had 4 phases, 8 weeks each. They rotated you through each day work, mid watch, late watch. And then your last phase, you were in the division you were going to stay in on the shift you were going to be on. So you worked with the guys that you would eventually work with, but under a trainer for your last 8 weeks. And I ended up on late watch in what was our third district at the time. It's the fourth division now.
What is late watch? So to give us an idea of the hours. Or do you guys were you guys on 8-hour shifts, 10, 12?
On late watch, we were on 8, and mid watch was on 10s, and day work was on 8s. Now it's all different. It's two 12-hour shifts now. I have no idea how that works, but we were on 8s. We went in at midnight, got off at 8. And the worst part about it was in the morning, you had court at 9, and the defense attorneys knew what was up. They knew, who was on what shifts. And so they would hang out or go disappear for a couple hours and make you wait till about 11 o'clock and then come in and say, oh, we're extending the case, hoping you would leave so they could dismiss it. Cause that happened a lot. They'd wait you out and you were exhausted, falling asleep in the waiting room. And it was just a pain. I learned to hate court really early and realized what a circus it was.
And let me tell
Yeah.
you, that used to piss me off. You'd come in, you'd either stay late or come in on your days off, only for them to go, "Oh, well, I think we're going to work something out." Well, you think you might have figured that out before you screw with my sleep, but no.
Exactly.
Well, and I read that in your book, John, and it just brought back memories that were not all that good.
Yeah. No, we're not. We're not.
Court is never a fun time too because you hang around for a long time only to get most of the time, unless you've got a really big case like when I was a detective, you'd work homicides, whatever, you might be on the stand for an hour or 2 hours. Most of the time your stuff is what, 10 minutes,
Yeah.
You're
If
hanging
that,
around for 10 minutes,
well,
5 minutes. Yeah.
they pay our Commonwealth attorneys so poorly in the state of Kentucky. I mean, horrible rates. Police get paid more than the attorneys, and they will not take many cases to trial. They want to settle everything they can at any cost, and it's mind-boggling. It's frustrating. It makes you not even want to do it because you go in and they go talk to the judge, and some little secret conversation happens, and poof, case is gone, and then the judge and the attorney go to play golf afterwards.
What fun. Not
Yeah,
that happens.
yeah,
They used to joke that the only justice in the halls of justice takes place in the halls. All of the
it's
discussions
true.
happen in the halls because by the time you get into the courtroom, most of the time it's
Worked
Murph,
out.
this is a fancy term. It's called fait accompli. It means it's already accomplished. That's
You
a
know what this
fancy
is?
word.
You know what
Yeah.
this is?
I have to this is Murph's re-education and retirement is one of our buddies says Sparty Hawk. Anyway, so but what tell us a little bit too about the city of Louisville. So when you're in this you said third district, was that right?
Correct.
What is that? What is the makeup of your district like? Is it residential, commercial, business? What have you got going on
So
there?
that division was a so you've got your really I don't know how else to say. You've got your really poor people, and then you've got your regular poor people that are not quite middle class. That was kind of the division I was in. It was very mixed. We had an area called Americana, which had probably 10 different races in there, several from Africa, from India, a very diverse group in a small area as far as that went. And we didn't have to do much policing in there because most of those people from other countries took care of their own business and didn't want the police involved. We had two projects in our division, one on the south end, one on the north end. So those kept us busy at night. And then you had just your normal. We did have one strip. It's called Seventh Street, and it had some strip clubs on it. And that you if you ever want to dope, you just ride through those club lots and jump out on the park car, whoever's in it, and you're going to score every time.
I bet you had to do a lot of club checks though, didn't you?
Well,
Go in and see what was going on.
it's a sacrifice, but you had to take time out of your night.
And as a citizen, I want to thank you for your sacrifice.
Yeah. And Murph's asking, can I do a ride along next time?
Yeah, I
It's not
think
a
with
bad
body
thing.
cams that might be frowned upon now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everything's frowned upon
Well,
now.
let's
Yes, it
talk
is.
about that a little bit though, too, because those areas like that tend to bring in various types of crime from prostitution to drugs, to violent stuff. What was your meat and potatoes? What was your staple of activity that was going on in that area? What was the kind of stuff that you could always count on happening in your district?
Well, when I first came on, crack was still a big thing, and then meth took off. About my second or third year in, that's when all the meth labs were blowing up all over the state, and Kentucky had quite a few of them. Um, and so meth was the huge thing that we had to watch for as far as when you stop cars or go in these houses. But it was just the street level crime there. That's the main thing because there was a lot of street robberies, a lot of shootings that just took place because we had like these pop-up clubs that would happen with like young people, and there'd be crowds of 200-300 just pop up out of nowhere in some little house or building, and then there would inevitably be a shooting or a stabbing, and you'd have to go to it. But it was just your typical low income crime area. It wasn't our West End because our West End had the more violent stuff where there was shootings, 2-3 times a day. But we had plenty of stuff to keep us busy. We got in a lot of car chases, a lot of foot chases, just fun stuff, man. It was like a cops episode every night my first few years.
Yeah, that's. I think a lot of our listeners think we're crazy to start with because we talk about the dangerous stuff being the fun part.
Oh, it's a blast. You live
It's
for
the
that
blast.
adrenaline.
It
Yeah.
is. It really is.
Well, and you know the amazing thing about cops is you got to realize for your face to be on TV, you have to sign a consent form. So all of those folks that are in their little tank top T-shirts, they call them wife beaters. That's their statement, not mine. Don't everybody go apoplectic. That means verklempt, Murph.
This means there's a
Yeah.
double. Here's a double for
Here's a
you.
double.
I'm gonna have to get my thesaurus out. Hold on a second.
I forgot.
I wouldn't even know how to
I'll-
spell that to look it up, so I'd be screwed.
but but you were talking about all those things. It's like this is what you live for. But every episode of Cops, you got to remember these people have to sign releases. So when you got the guy going up there, yeah, I hit her with the meat sausage, and banged her up the tickets. The dude signed a release to get his 15 minutes of fame,
Yeah.
on Cops.
Yep. Yeah,
Now, were you ever on a Cops episode?
No, Louisville wouldn't allow cops in town. But for about a year and a half, we had what was called Louisville Cops, where they thought it'd be a great idea. They had a little studio in town that would come out and follow us around, a couple guys with cameras riding cars. And I always avoided it like the plague. I didn't want to be on TV. I didn't want my face out there. I didn't want any of it. But if you YouTube, I'm on YouTube. I was infamous way before this crap. And if you YouTube, I think it's Louisville Cop Falls Over Fence During Drug Raid. You will get a video of my rear end falling over a rail.
Okay, let's stop right there. We're going to
Well, they
pull
got
that up
your.
and
Hey,
take a
they
look
got
at
your
it.
best
Oh,
side.
yeah.
What can we say?
I think that's what it's called. Louisville Cop Falls Over Fence During Drug Raid.
Okay, so tell us. Well, let's talk about this drug raid then.
Yeah.
So
So this was back, I had already left the beat, and I was on what's called a flex platoon, which we did like street level narcotics, prostitution, whatever the major in our division needed. We were kind of at his behest. And we were out doing a drug warrant. This was the first couple months I was there. Did you find it?
I found it.
Oh, you got to
Yeah.
watch it, and you got to turn it up, because whoever remixed that, at the time our chief was Chief White, and they had a little video out trying to get people to come on the police department.
I'll have to figure out how to get this piped into here. But yeah, you see the people coming up. It looks like a
gotta turn this up.
2-story, little house. All right.
Oh, that was a cluster, man. So I was new to this flex unit. I was all excited. I was enjoying going through doors. And on this one, I had to go out and gather information for my partner. So I set out on this thing for like 5 hours. I'm giving description of the house, giving people coming and going, giving cars, giving tags, but I'm about 2 blocks away. So our flex sergeant was a new sergeant, or new to flex, never done dope. We had never really done dope. And so we're all kind of learning on the fly anyway. And when they're on their way there, he gets on the radio and says, "We'll be there in 5 minutes." I'm like, "Where you got me at in the stack?" And I'm thinking, you saw it.
I just saw it.
No, it's not
Isn't
just
that
once. They
awesome?
show it 4 times.
That's a good rear end, isn't it?
All righty.
Oh my God, man! That was a perfect 1-point landing, like right on
Yes.
your face.
Oh man.
listen,
And
John.
so you go up 4 steps, that's 4 foot. You go over the rail, which is another 3.5 foot.
Yep.
And then the backyard was a total drop off. So I dropped like 10 feet right on my head.
Hey, and just so you know, we're not laughing with you. We're laughing at you.
We're laughing at
that's-
you. There's
you know
a
what?
difference.
I will take that over hate. You can laugh at me all you want, man.
Oh, my
I've had enough hate for a lifetime, so give me the
Okay,
laugh.
this one is going on the website. So
Yeah.
all right. Well,
And
you
once
did
again, our listeners have heard us say 1,000 times, you can't have thin skin in this career.
No,
Oh,
no. And
no,
if you can't laugh at yourself, what are you going to do? I mean, I'm not
Well,
going to cry.
let's talk about the aftermath of this raid then, because how much grief did you catch once it made it out onto the
my
news?
God. So let me finish this story, and I'll tell you about that. So I'm sitting on the eye all day. They come up. This new sergeant goes, "Take the rear," and I knew enough to know if I'm in the back of the stack, if I take the rear, it's too late. He's out the back door. And so I was ticked off. I was mad. I sat there all day. I wanted to go through this door. And when we get there, I'm pouting, mad. I'm late. They're already through the front door. I come trotting up. I'm being lazy. I didn't even put my radio away. I think I'm athletic. I'll go right over this fence. My toe catches it. I go face first down. I land on my wrist. I can't even get my gun out of my holster at this point. I climb back over this rail like a sheepish little fool. And the cameraman is at the edge of the house that recorded me, and his camera's just bouncing. He's laughing so hard. And I go up to him, I went, "Man, did you catch that?" He went, "Yeah, but don't worry, I'll edit it out." It didn't happen.
Liar.
It didn't
Liar.
happen. Man, I started getting calls. I think that came out on Sunday nights at like 9 o'clock. By 9:30, my phone was just blowing up, people laughing at me, and it was great. I go to the jail to drop prisoners off, and 2 or 3 jail guards would come out and go, "Are you the guy that was on YouTube that fell over the fence?" I'm like,
No.
"It's me,
No,
man."
it
I
wasn't
mean,
me.
what are you
Dude,
gonna
not
do?
only did they edited it, they put it back like in slow-mo. They did
Oh,
a whole
yeah.
thing and they did a slow-mo.
4
Yeah.
times they showed it.
That's where Chief White goes, "Do you have what it takes to be a Louisville Metro police officer?"
I just saw him pop up there. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's even bad when the chief gets involved in it and rubs your face in it.
It's funny.
Yeah, it was an experience.
So, as they say, what did you learn from this experience, Officer Mattingly?
Well, put your gear away when you're supposed to have it away and quit pouting. Just do your job.
There you go. There you
Well,
go.
now let's talk about the aftermath of the raid, though. Did you get what you were looking for? Did you get who
Oh,
you were
yeah.
looking for?
Oh,
Was
no,
it a
we got
success?
it was a huge success especially for new drug guys. Back in the day, I think it was over a pound of cocaine and bunch of weed, which is no big deal. And then what else did they get? There's 3 different things. I think they got crack with it, crack and cocaine, and then some weed. So it was a good draw for us, new young guys.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
You know what? It's one thing to tell the story. It's another thing when you can see it. And your
Yes.
story doesn't do justice to just watching them do this, like he says, Murph says, 4 times. Here you come over the railing, and then it's like, oh, and then you disappear over the other side.
Maybe that should have been my clue to get out of drug work. I don't know.
I don't know. I tell you.
Nah,
Well,
drug work's a lot of
I
fun.
said all the cool things I've done in my career, diving over fences, cars, all the cool stuff, and that's
what
what's
does
on
everybody
video.
remember? This is
That's
what you're
it.
going to, yeah,
That's it. I'm it.
that's it. It's on YouTube. Well, gosh. How many years were you into your career when that happened?
5.5, 6.
Okay.
Yeah, because I did late watch for a little over 5 years. Then I went to our flex unit in 2005, and this was shortly after that.
What is a flex unit?
It's a unit that is supposed to be flexible in the division. We would always get the lower level drug complaints or just the citywide complaints as far as prostitution.
Kind of like quality of life stuff?
Yeah, but it was probably 90% drug work
Okay.
because most things, most quality of life issues stem from drugs or from narcotics. And
Thefts and burglaries and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
most things. So that's what we did, and it was fun. I mean, we had some good tight crews, and being new guys, and this is one of the problems with the police departments, though. They stick you in positions, give you a badge that says detective, and do very little training on you on how to do it. It's recreating the wheel every time instead of having experienced guys that slowly lead you into it. I think that's a mistake we make.
Training has always been a huge issue. I mean, I know, like with me, when I got on detective, it's like nobody really there to mentor you. You kind of figured this out on your own. You did stuff. I know Murph when you got on, right? But you guys kind of had a program. Weren't you assigned with like a more senior agent, somebody to kind of mentor you or watch over you?
Yeah. Well, even when I started as a city cop in West Virginia, you had a training officer for a while. You had to ride
Yeah.
with somebody, not quite as long. Although I got hired in November, went to the academy, West Virginia State Police Academy in February or March, and that was 3 months. Then you come back out and you still rode with a guy for several weeks. But at DEA, you had a senior partner, and that's the best thing you can do because that's where you learn the real job. I mean, John, I don't know if you've ever worked with DEA, but the report writing process is the worst in the frickin' world. I mean, we even had a class in the academy on form numbers because there's so damn many different forms and reports that you have to
Well,
fill
that's
out.
why they have TFOs, right? So they can write all their state warrants, and they can scoot around the all the protocols, and then if it's something huge, they'll adopt it.
You're not supposed to figure that out.
Oh man, they couldn't.
Wait.
Most federal agencies couldn't survive in cities without local cops.
It wasn't the
You're
TFOs
exactly
who
right.
figured it out, Murph. It was the feds who go, it's easier if the TFOs do this.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
a lot
I know.
easier.
But it was, but you're right. You can't expect anybody, and that not only applies to when you first get on the job, as you're getting promoted up through the ranks, especially when you're starting to get into leadership roles. Just because you're a good cop or a good whatever your career is, doesn't mean you're going to be a good leader. And it took DEA quite a long time before they finally started sending new supervisors to leadership schools.
There's leaders and there's managers, and there's a
Right.
difference between the two, right? You got to
Oh,
send, you
huge.
got to develop the leadership skills.
Yep.
So, what made you decide to go to this flex unit? Was it you just done your time on the street looking for something different to do?
Yeah, narcotics was always like the thing that I wanted to do. And then naturally on top of that, I was tired of being on late watch. But more importantly, you got a plain car. You got to wear whatever clothes you wanted. Your schedule was kind of flexible.
Apparently, you got to wear jeans, white tennis shoes, and a white shirt and go over the railing.
Yes.
But you did have your vest on. That was a good thing.
You did have your
Yes.
vest on. There you
Yeah.
go.
So that was just kind of the draw. I mean, the flexibility. I had 3 kids, like I said at the time, um, but just what I wanted to do, and so it got me in the door to doing that.
But that was a detective position, though?
Correct.
So let's start talking about that because we want to talk about working up, obviously, into the event, the shooting. What? Tell us about your progression. Through the department at that point. Did you stay in investigations then the rest of the time?
No, in 2009, I got promoted. My sergeant at the time came to me. It was like 2 weeks before the test, and I'd signed up, but I hadn't studied because I was like, nah, I don't want to do it. I like the unit I'm in, the crew I'm in, and we get along great, and I'm having fun. So I was like, I'm not taking the test. Well, she came to me. She said, why aren't you taking the test? And I explained why. And she said, have you noticed who they're promoting? And I said, yeah. She said, bunch of idiots. She said, do you want to work for them or do you want to work with them? I went,
Yep.
kind of a good point. So I took the test, ended up getting promoted in September of '09. Had to go back to the street. And so I went to late watch again for about a year. And then after that, a district detective unit opened up for a sergeant. I took it, which is just all your crimes except homicides, business robberies. And so we ran all that. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then I went back to a flex unit as a sergeant.
When you said it was a district, did you guys have a centralized then, kind of like robbery, homicide, or major case squad that would handle the homicides and the other
Yes.
things?
Yeah, we've always had homicide, robbery. Back then, even we had a street crime unit before they dissolved it, and they picked up some of that type stuff, the violent stuff.
So if you had a homicide, then what was the name of the unit?
It was just homicide. That was it.
Homicide. Okay.
Criminal Investigation Division.
So if you had a homicide, then obviously centralized unit, they would come in no matter where in the county, right, and work the
Correct.
case.
Yep. You held the perimeter, and they came in, did all the work.
When you took the sergeant exam, what kind of thing? What was important at that time for them from a leadership standpoint? What were they looking for in their first line
There's
supervisors?
there was no leadership. It was uh, learn your SOP and law and your contract. Those were the 3 things that the written test was over. And after that, you had oral interviews, which were scenario based. And so they brought people in from around the country from other departments to grade you on it. You sat in there and watched a video, and then you had 15 minutes to write your response on a piece of paper and then present it. What you thought, you had a 5-minute presentation that you had to give how you would respond to these scenarios. One was, a huge shooting event. One was a catastrophe over here with chemical agents, and I can't remember what the third one was. And so it was kind of a joke because what they were looking for was not reality. I mean, we're calling in the buses to house people. We're shutting down our electric. We're doing all these things that never take place. You're calling in the infantry. Well, none of those things are always available. So it was basically a learning and regurgitation thing, not based on your performance, not based on your past, not based on peer reviews, which should have a part in it. It was just simply learn, regurgitate. If you were a good test taker, good presenter, you got promoted.
Couple of my buddies we had on the podcast that were New Scotland Yard. They worked the 7705 train bombings, and I'm talking to one of those guys one time, and they're talking about they went through their promotion exam, sergeant's exam, and he says I was given this very sticky situation. He says you're standing guard when the Queen comes out and she's attacked by the IRA. At the same time, a plane crashes into the Thames, and the third time a bomb goes off. What do? He says, take off my uniform and blend in with the crowd.
There
That
you
was
go.
his response.
Yeah, yeah.
That
'Cause
was a
it's
no-win. Basically, they give you no-win situations, and they want to see, how you respond to it.
yeah, yeah, and the more outlandish and the more crazy stuff you were able to think and add to these scenarios, the better you got. And you're like, I'll play the game and do it, but in reality, this would never ever happen.
Well, do you remember your responses? I mean, like you talked, because we are going to talk about a shooting a little bit later. What kind of shooting scenario was it, if you
Oh
remember?
man, I don't remember. This was 2009 when I did this. It was, I'm sure it was just some generic, probably a business shooting that led into hostages because all of it was based on using all your peripheral tools like hostage negotiation, SWAT, the helicopter unit, the canine unit, using our TARC buses to come in, like I said, and house people, calling in the Red Cross and having them there on standby. You had a food truck come in. I mean, all these things that as a sergeant, as a street level sergeant, you're not making all these calls, you're not doing all these things, but you had to give that in your scenario.
What they're not accounting for there too is when you're calling in all these resources, you're adding onto a budget which doesn't have any fluff in it at all.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
as I read in your book, you guys didn't get overtime. You got time off, right? For overtime.
We they didn't have overtime until 3 years ago, maybe. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
after COVID and everything, all of a sudden we've got all this money and there's just unlimited overtime. Plus, we're so short staffed, they have to fill the streets, so they're just, I guess because they're not putting that money into pensions and people's pay, they've got the extra money for overtime.
Mm-hmm.
I missed out on all that though. That sucks.
Hey, well, other than you tripping and falling over the railing and being immortalized, there's the old joke. What's the difference between love and YouTube?
What's that?
YouTube is forever.
YouTube is forever.
Oh, that's true.
Hey, but it was funny. We were talking. One of Murph's buddy, he was kind of glossing by some things like you're about to do here, and we ended up finding out his first day on the job, he was out on his own. A naked guy on meth climbs through the window of his patrol car. So that was his indoctrination to work in the streets down in Dallas.
Yeah.
What is a weird event that happened to you?
Oh man, ton of weird events. Like, in my opinion, the coolest thing that happened to me, I'll give you that. You want that?
Yeah.
So I made a run one night, and they weren't full blown projects, but they were subsidized housing, and they were like 8-unit complexes all around. And got a call of possible domestic. They heard somebody screaming. So I show up, I go up to the door. My partner wasn't there yet. I hear a lady inside screaming. I bang on the door. She screams. I kick the door in. She is in the middle of getting stranger raped. There's a stranger broke into her house, climbed through the window, and was raping her. So I chased the guy through the window, ended up catching him down the street. He got like 12 years in prison. But just the things that you envision being a police officer, that this is why I do what I do, that was one of the times it actually came to fruition. And it was like, man, I didn't stop the rape, but I was at least there to break it up and catch the guy and put him in prison. So that's kind of the coolest thing, I believe. I mean, there's been a ton of stuff. I've forgotten more probably than I could even tell you.
Well, we just had Dan Murphy of NYPD. We had a couple of buddies of mine from NYPD on before, and they have some funny stories. So, but one of the fun things to do is to play practical jokes on other guys.
Oh
so,
yeah, we did that.
So have you got a good one you want to share with us?
Well, yeah. Well, the one that just pops in my head right now. We were at a gas station filling up because you had your gas cards. You had to go to certain stations, and usually after roll call late watch guys, 3 or 4 of us would go to a certain gas station, fill our cars up, go in and get a drink, talk for a few minutes. Well, the little red emergency button on your radio, or orange, whatever it was on your radio.
Mm-hmm.
If you press it, it puts out what we had. Ours was called 1030, the emergency signal, and the radio would start checking on you, and if not, they'd send cars your way, code 3 and all that. So I had mine on this table that had some straws and a bucket and a few other things around. I walked back to use the restroom, and one of the guys I worked with hit the button and dropped it down into the straws. So I come back and I'm like, man, what did I do with my radio? I go back to the bathroom and check, come out, and I hear the tones going off on their handhelds. And I'm like, man, what's going on? Because as a younger guy, you're like, yeah, where's this at? We're going.
Uh-huh.
And they start laughing. And then I hear my code number come out, and they keep checking me. I'm like, somebody give me a radio, but you got to call from your radio because they want to see your encoder. And so finally I dug it out of the straws and I get it out. So I walk back out to my car. Ha ha, funny, right? So I walk out to my car. The guy that did it, his car was right in front of me. Well, I had some of that fart spray in my car that you mess with people. And I took it, and he left his car door unlocked. So I opened it and I sprayed the entire roof of his car on the inside with that fart spray, locked his door and shut it. And so that guy never played any more jokes on me again. But that same guy, funny story, I was there, but I wasn't the one that did it. This same guy loved to play jokes.
Oh, sure. I was there. I saw it, officer, but it wasn't
caveat out there.
In full disclosure, this was a outdoor movie theater that we would go park because there was hills, because your seats didn't recline because you're cage. So we would go to the back of this outdoor movie theater and park on the back row because there was an angle, and you could kind of rest your eyes for a few minutes at night if you needed to, because you had all your buddies there with you. Well, one of the guys got out to pee. So he jumps out of his car, throws it in drive, locks his door, shuts it, and this car is going over these hills up toward the thing. Finally, it hits something slow. It didn't damage it, but it hit something slow and stopped it. But that was just the kind of stuff on Late Watch, man. It was always, I mean, you had to keep
Whoa.
yourself entertained somehow. Or
Whoa, that's
sane
pretty
is the right
drastic
word.
there.
Had to keep eyes in the back of your head too, just so
Yeah.
these other sons of bitches didn't sneak up on
That's
you.
it, man. They
cow.
get you.
That's one of the most drastic practical jokes I've heard. I
Oh,
think.
it was funny, though. We just,
I-
I mean, you died
I
laughing.
told you this one. I may have told you this one, Murph. But when I was a police officer, our cars were keyed the same. And one of the guys, I was the street supervisor that night, and I would always tell guys, don't check out on the radio when you're working midnight shifts. Go home, just call in. When you get back in, you go back in service, just call in service. We don't want, we weren't that big of a department. We didn't want the bad guys who could listen in on the scanner to know where you were.
Mhm.
And this one guy just wouldn't do it. So I finally decided I got to teach him a lesson. So he goes home every morning at 3 a.m. Tim Schultz, if you're listening, I apologize for this. He came back out. He hung out. He came back out to his house, out of his house, and he's got 2 hot dogs in one hand and a can of Coke in the other. Well, I had hidden in the back of the old big Chevy Impalas. They had the cage there with the plexiglass, slid the screen over. He sits down. He's sitting there. He just sat down. He's got 2 hot dogs in one hand and a Coke in his other. I reached through the screen, put my hand around his mouth, and I go, "Don't move, cop."
Oh, that'll get you.
He squeezed those hot dogs, squeezed the Coke, and it was like, "You son of a bitch." Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
want to kill you after that one.
Yep, me too.
Let me tell you what, though, he never checked out on the radio again.
I guarantee it. Yeah.
That's a leadership trick. You got to learn these leadership tricks, how to motivate your men. Digression, but it's in the vein of telling jokes. So let's start working our way up into March 13th of 2020, because that's when this shooting happens. You've been working the streets quite a long time now. You're back out on the streets now. You did your time at patrol, then you went back out. So let's start working up to this. What kind of work were you doing? Let's say the 2 years leading up to March 2020.
So I had moved up to our major narcotics unit, and up until September of 2019, from 17 to 2019, I was over major case, which had TFOs and FBI and DEA. We did wiretaps, we did larger cases, and so it was a good time. I learned a lot, did a lot of things with the guys. Stay busy every night. I mean, you think you're getting off at 6 at night, and next thing you know, you're calling your wife at 8 going, I'm not going to make dinner, then calling her back at 10 going, yeah, just go to bed, I'll see you when I see you. And that happened over and over and over. And so when it got to the point where I knew I was coming up close to the end of my career, I wanted to do about 25 years, but I'd seen guys that had just gone full bore, which I'd done. Everything had been 100 miles an hour to this point. This was 19 years in. So I'd gone 100 miles an hour my entire career. And I've seen these guys that were lazy slugs get paid the same as me doing absolutely nothing their whole career. But that's on them, whatever. That's boring. I didn't want to do that. So I'm going, but I'd seen these guys retire like me that went from 100 miles an hour to nothing. And I thought, I don't want to do that, because then those guys, they're looking for what we talked about earlier, that next adrenaline rush. They're looking, and they do things stupid. They drink too much. They go out on their wife. They do different things to get that little feeling back of what they missed. And so I thought, well, I need to start tapering off. I don't want to totally quit doing what I'm doing, but I'm going to start tapering off these last few years. There was an opening in our parcel interdiction unit. We went to UPS, FedEx, and it was a fun unit. It was small. There was me and 3 other guys. And we would go out at night and we'd fill 6-foot tables up with dope to the ceiling off 20 packages from UPS. So it was shooting fish in a barrel.
So let's talk about that for a second. Did you receive training, or how did you go about profiling these packages? How did you know? Were you running dogs, x-rays? How were you identifying these packages?
Well, they got this system together before I went back there. It had been in place for years. They have a computer system that they can use that shows you inbound where they're coming from, because we're fortunate in Louisville on this end that we are the main hub for UPS. There's over 2 million packages a day that come through Louisville. Now, they would only allow us out there one night a week because they didn't want their name getting put out, like, oh my gosh, UPS is the biggest dope dope dealer in the country, because they are.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
um, so we would go out there. We would look at source cities, where they were going. Then we would pull the names and addresses off of them and look through Accurate or Clear or one of those programs to see if it matched up. We pull Google Maps, and you look at this, overnighted $600 package going to this total, total horrible house in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, all these flags would come up. Then you pull those packages aside, you set them out with regular packages. There'd be 3 good packages, 1 bad one, or you put them down the line of the normal packages. Then you bring the canine in, they'd run the packages, they'd alert. If they alerted, you pulled it, you start writing a warrant on it, because we only had like a 2-hour window where you grabbed the packages off the belt, ran it, had to get the warrant signed, because you had to pop them open, because if they were good packages, and sometimes they were, you'd have to tape them back up and get them on the plane before it went out at 5:30 in the morning. So it was very quick once you got there, and I was trained by the sergeant before me. I kind of shadowed him, because I said I didn't want to do what I did when I went into narcotics and have to learn it myself, because this was a totally different animal. It was still dope, but it was a different animal.
Yeah,
So,
and you guys had to, like you say, because you're impacting business, you got to work pretty quickly because for UPS, if it's a legitimate package, it's got to be on that plane or that
Yeah.
or
truck
they're
and
paying
getting
for it.
delivered. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it wasn't just police work. There was a lot of PR work involved too. You had to schmooze the bosses out there, keep them on your good side, because, like what you said, you're going to impact their business, which then reflects down on them. They get in trouble by their upper commands. You know how it is. And so that was a huge integral part of it. Being as a boss, you had to go out there and talk to these people, and let them, reassure them that what you're doing is on the up and up. They would come in while we're opening packages, especially money packages. We wanted one of their people there. We had cameras going. We'd count it in front of them, bag it up, send it off, just because we didn't want any possibilities of impropriety.
And so during that time, give us an idea of like the amount of dope and money you seized, even one day a week.
Yeah. So um, there was nights we get, say you'd get a huge table full. Usually the 6 foot, fold out table is what we put it on. The majority was always weed, but then we'd get every week a kilo of something: fentanyl, heroin, cocaine. They'd be packaged in anything from porcelain lamps to microwaves to kids' cars. We got deep freezers with stuff lined in them. I mean, all kinds of stuff that comes through there. They had, like I said, over 2 million packages a night come through there. We would, at the most, we'd pull 20 packages, because that's all that time would allow. We'd pull 20 packages, go through them, and probably 16, 17 of them were positive. And it was just amazing. And so you had to think, man, we're pulling 16 a week out of 2 million, 6 days a week, 12 million packages, and we're pulling 20 of them. And this is what we're getting. How much are we missing?
Well, that's the
That's
thing. Out of
that's
2 million packages, how many of them, if you could look at every package, how many packages would get seized?
And
10%,
yeah, who knows,
15%.
man? Who knows? Anything come from the West Coast or the southern border area?
Yeah, we used to have we had a joke too. There was a couple times Kansas used to have their county designation on the license plate, so you could tell what county it was. And we used to joke there were a couple counties where if you had that tag and you're out in our area, that was probable cause not only to stop but to arrest. So there was no reason.
Yeah, that's like when I did that interview with Strahan. He was like, "Man, does is there racial profiling?" And I threw him off. I went, "Yeah, there is." He sat back in his chair, and I went, "Anytime in our West End, which is 99% black, predominantly black," I said, "anytime," because we butt up to Indiana, Louisville. There's a
Mhm.
river. Indiana's right there. It's a 5-minute drive. And I said, anytime we'd see a white person with Indiana tags in the West End, we'd pull them over, because they 99% of the time had drugs in the car. They were there to buy dope. And so he was like, "Wait a minute. So you profile white people?" I'm like, "That's how it works, man." I said, "The rest of it's criminal profiling. We don't how can you profile a black
It's
person in a black
profiling
neighborhood?"
with it's profiling with the small p. People get it wrong. They think it's profiling with the big P. It's profiling with the small p.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And my because he came to me and said, his rebuttal was, "Well, I've been racially profiled." I went, "How many times you been pulled over?" "One time in his life." "One time?" "Yeah, but I was a black man in a nice car, so they just assumed it." And then when he came up, saw who it was, he told me he was a big fan, and I didn't get a ticket. I said, "Wait a minute, were you speeding?" "No." I said, "Do you ever speed?" He went, "No." I went, "Well, you're lying, because we all speed. I've gotten speeding tickets as a cop, so I know you're
Me
lying."
too.
And I
Me too.
said,
From the state police? Did you get it from the state police?
"I did, Tennessee."
Tennessee.
Yeah, it
Damn
got
them.
me.
All
Yeah.
right, THP.
This was after I got shot. It was bizarre. But anyway, troopers are different. You guys are weird. Um,
Thank you very much,
just in
and
that
thank
aspect,
you for
y'all don't cut
Shut
joining
the
the
hell
anybody
up.
show today.
breaks.
Shut the hell up, Murph. Okay. Yeah.
No, so where was I on this?
Michael Strahan getting
Oh yeah,
pulled
yeah,
over
yeah.
speeding.
So
Everybody does.
yeah, so I said, so you've been pulled over one time in your life and you didn't get a ticket, and you call that racial profiling? So just the mindset of these people out here is amazing. How skewed it is, and what they think reality is compared to reality. And I'm like, dude, you need to come do a ride along with some cops and get your head around this, because you've got it all wrong. You got it all
Well,
wrong.
and that's like the folks who used to say, "You just pulled me over because I'm X," and they insert their race, and I'm going, "Look, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm coming at you at 55 miles an hour. You're coming at me at 75 miles an hour. So that's 130 miles an hour closure. And somehow I'm able to pick out your height, weight, race,
Yeah,
sex, hair, eye color at 130 miles an hour at 11 o'clock at night with bright lights in my face."
exactly. Yeah,
Uh,
You
it's
know,
asinine. Most of it
yeah.
is.
I've had Hispanic suspects accuse me of being racist because they were Hispanic. Both of my daughters are adopted from Colombia.
Yeah.
You
I don't
racist
think I'm
bastard.
racist
I
against
know
Well,
that.
it's like my son-in-law is black, and I've got two biracial grandkids, and people
Mhm.
call me that all the time, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
he's been in our family since they were in seventh grade. I mean, if I was racist, there was an opportunity for me to squelch that and discourage it from my daughter. But he's a good guy, so I didn't care. Just treat my daughter
right,
right.
right.
Well, anyway, we're going to get into that. So because I think that kind of leads into what we're talking about. So let's start laying the groundwork. But the thing I wanted to focus on too was the amount of work you have to do, and that's why I'm glad you talked about the packages, because there's a lot of controls in place when you start doing things like this. Everything from policy, procedure. You've got cameras. You have to have somebody else in there. You have to have another person in there. Third party authentication and control. I mean, you guys put all these stuff in place not because you're bad and corrupt. It's because you want integrity in the outcome. You don't want a defense attorney to be able to challenge the results. So let's start talking about working up towards March 13th. So let's start laying the groundwork for this. What unit were you in? What was going on? How did this thing start coming about?
Okay, so like I said, I just transferred to this parcel unit. And to frame it a little bit, about 2 years before I went there, they used to work with Postal also. So it was FedEx, UPS, and Postal, the three main carriers that we have here. We didn't have DHL; it's up in northern Kentucky. So LMPD and Postal, the postal inspector, got into a beef 2 years before I went there, and it was such a huge deal and caused so much strife and drama between the two agencies that they totally cut ties. And UPS didn't work with LMPD. LMPD didn't work with UPS. They decided, or United States Postal Service, they decided to go with a smaller agency on the outskirts of our city, which is fine. I knew the guys that worked that agency; they're good guys. And when in January of 2020, so the department started a new unit. I'm in narcotics. The department started a brand new unit called place-based investigations. Now they got this unit from a protocol or a model from Cincinnati, and what that does is it's a very precise unit that pinpoints targets and strictly goes after that one target until they've exhausted all means of investigation, and then they move to the next target. And so one of the detectives in this unit, they're the brand new unit. This was their very first case ever. This Breonna Taylor case was, and they come to me, the lead detective, and says, "Hey, can you run a name and an address and see if they get any packages there?" I said, "Through which company?" He said, "Through Postal." And I said, "Dude, I have zero contact with Postal. I don't have their numbers. I don't know who they are. I've never met them. I don't know them at all." I said, "But I do know the guys that do know them. I can hook you up with them, and you all can work it out." He said, "It's cool." So while he's standing there in front of me, I text the sergeant and the detective at that unit in a group text. And I said, "Do you have anything on Jamarcus Glover at 3003 Springfield, apartment 4?" I got the response back, "Man, that name sounds familiar. We just did a package. We just pulled a package on a Glover. Let me get back with you." I showed Josh, who was the detective, I showed him the text. I exchanged their numbers, and I thought I was done with it. About 2 weeks later, I see their lead detective from Shively at UPS. He works security out there. We were pulling boxes, and we just happened to run into each other. And I went, "Hey, Mike," I said, "did you ever get that information for Josh?" He went, "Yeah, I talked to Kelly, who was Josh's co-lead on this case. It was Josh and Kelly." And he said, "I talked to Kelly. We were talking about the vehicles. They didn't match up. We realized I had the wrong Glover. We had like a Jeffrey Glover and they have Jamarcus Glovers, both Jay Glovers, both getting packages. So just a weird coincidence. And there's not many coincidences in police work, but that was a weird coincidence." And I said, "Cool. I could care less. Not my case. I have nothing in it." I go back to the office the next morning. Josh is walking toward me. I said, "Josh, did you get the message? I talked to Mike last night. He said it's the wrong Glover." He said, "Yeah, Kelly told me it's the wrong Glover. And dang, now I got to write all these warrants. I was hoping to just do a rip or a reverse one on these packages. Now I got to write all these warrants." I was like, "Sorry, dude. That was the extent of my involvement in this investigation." Now, little did I know that would come back to haunt us 5 months later, but we'll get into that in a minute. But that's where I was at the time, and that's kind of the groundwork.
Yeah, just lay a little bit of the groundwork. Just don't talk about it, but just tie it into it. When you say that's going to come back to haunt you 5 months later, it's because you had additional information or you had some other insights. What was the gap that it had it been filled that day might have prevented whatever might have happened?
Well, later on in that warrant, the wording they used, so they had pictures of Jamarcus Glover. They've got pictures of him walking in Breonna Taylor's apartment empty handed, coming out with postal packages. So there's no doubt he was getting them there. But what I tell people all the time, because I did this for however many years and then however many months, just parcels, because previously we dealt with parcels as well on the street because people always get dope sent to them. But the common denominator is, if John Mattingly's getting dope sent to him, do you think I'm going to send it in my name? Heck no. I want that
Exactly.
plausible deniability if it comes to my door. And better yet, I'm not sending it to my door. I'm sending it to a girlfriend's door, a vacant apartment, a baby mama, something. And that happened all the time. They'd send it 2 houses down to a vacant house. UPS had no idea. They'd drop it off the porch and leave. They'd have one of the kids walk down, pick the package up, bring it back. We go hit the house. So for him even asking me, does he have anything in his name? I guess that's crossing your T's and dotting your I's in investigations, but it also shows a lack of knowledge in what goes on with packages. And so Jamarcus Glover did get packages from Breonna Taylor at that house and took them down. But unfortunately, the detectives put in the warrant that the postal inspector verified that Jamarcus Glover was getting packages there, and he did not verify it. But that wording was in the warrant. And that wasn't even brought to our attention until I think the warrant got posted in late April, maybe early May, and the postal inspector saw the warrant and read it and was like, "Oh, I never said that." And he got on the news and said that this wasn't me. I didn't never said it, because he still had an axe to grind with LMPD. He could have backdoor channeled LMPD and said, as a postal inspector, and said, "Hey guys, you've got a problem here." Instead, he went to the media because he saw his opportunity to take where he'd gotten his feelings hurt a couple of years earlier, and he used it. And the sad
What do
thing
you
is, what's that?
What do you mean he got his feelings hurt? Was there an operation that went on that what he didn't get to play or what?
Yeah, I really don't want to get into detail, but there was some postal employees that had gotten wrapped up in some investigations, and they were butthurt that they weren't informed about it. They thought they should have been in on the loop when they weren't. So they fired those employees. They threatened to charge them. It was just a big scandal. And then on top of that, they wanted some private records that LMPD had that we had to go to court and fight just to even keep them from getting them. And so it was just a big mess. It was a big contest of who's got more juice, and he lost on that one, and he was pretty upset about it. So that brought us to that day, or to that investigation, which if we had had direct contact with him, things would have been a lot easier, because I could have just called right there on the spot, squelched all these issues. But instead, it was the telephone game, going through different parties, different times, 2 weeks here, a week here. And I gave these detectives the benefit of the doubt for months, defended them on podcasts and stuff, and said, "Man, when you're doing 5 warrants at one time, you're not sitting down one day and just knocking out 5 warrants. It's not the way it works. It's just like investigative letters. It's just like case files. You build these warrants as you
You build
go.
it. Yep.
And as you get that information, you're plugging it in." And if he saw that original text message and said, "Good possibility this is the same Glover," I could see him plugging that in right there with the forethought of thinking, if that comes back negative, I'll just take it out later and put in that I saw him with the package. And that never happened. And come to find out, I think Kelly knew for sure, and she left it in the warrant anyway. And they even got together after the fact and went to Josh's garage to say, well, we'll just say Mattingly told us, and they can't prove he didn't. But then she got hemmed up on some other federal stuff, and she ratted him out saying that's what they did. So it's pretty messy. This case is messy enough and ugly enough, and this just throws one more crink into it that just
Okay. Well, we'll leave that for the back end of it now too, because I just wanted to set a little additional context. Because look, I'll tell you, it's unfortunate, but that's why I wanted to ask you about the postal inspector, because sometimes you have to, when people talk, you have to look at them and go, okay, why are you talking? What's your agenda? What's underneath the statement you're giving, right? So I kind of wanted to put that out there. So let's start talking about this. So they're working up these warrants. Like I said, you're just peripherally involved. You're not even the main lead. So tell us about that day. How do you end up being out there with them?
so about 2 weeks before the warrant, their sergeant put out an email to all of narcotics, um, saying we need additional bodies. This is a large operation, manpower intensive. We got 5 warrants we're doing. SWAT's hitting a couple of them, but we need bodies for the rest of them. Plus, we need bodies for once SWAT leaves, to go in and handle these locations. He put the addresses out. I looked at the addresses and I said, man, West End, West End, West End, West End, South End. Here's an apartment as opposed to these trap houses in the West End. Because you and I both know, you go in these trap houses, they're nasty. There's feces, there's dirt, there's roaches, because these guys are just coming in for the day, selling their dope and getting out. Half these houses are vacant anyway. So, plus, when you do anything in an urban area like that, as soon as the police get there, what happens? You get a crowd of 50 to 100, 200 people gather around, saying stuff, doing stuff. And I was just tired of it. I had done this stuff for so many years. I was like, give me the easy one. That's what I thought. Give me the easy one. I'll take the apartment in the South End that's 10 miles away and not attached to this stuff. So that's what I did. I said, I even emailed him back, said, give me if you can, give me Springfield. If not, I'll go wherever you need me. So he gave me Springfield as the sergeant on that one. And that kind of brought us to the night of March 12th.
Well, and so when you pick Springfield, you have, I mean, you've got really no prior information. That's just for you. It's just an issue of convenience, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it was a selfish motive for me to take that. And people ask me, when we did our civil deposition, I was asked by their attorney, he kept hammering, well, you knew it was Breonna Taylor's apartment. You knew that the information in the warrant wasn't accurate because you're the one that checked on it. And I said, well, it's true, I checked on it, but number one, as in our parcels, we're doing, 40, 50 warrants a week where I'm looking at addresses, I'm looking at names. I said, if I was that smart to remember 2.5 months back a name or an address from something that I had no involvement in, never physically saw it, never typed anything on paper, never had any other contact with it. I said, I'd be brilliant. I'm not that smart. I'm just a cop. If I was that smart, I wouldn't be here. And so I
I'd be a
totally,
lawyer asking me these
oh
dumbass
no,
questions.
no
Yeah.
kidding. So I was like, that wasn't even in my head when I looked at that. I chose that spot based on I didn't want to dig through nasty feces and grime. That's what that was about.
And by that time too, and I just want to clarify too, when you say, I mean, your involvement was so minimal, you wrote nothing. You've got nothing other than sending a group text, putting people in touch. I mean, you've got no official paperwork that you have filed or that you have created on this warrant,
Correct.
right?
That's exactly right.
And now you're just basically you're a body. I mean,
That's it.
you're a
I'm
body out
help.
there to go out to help.
Yep, that's it.
And you said that was March 12th. So how do things pan out over the next 24 hours?
Well, that email was 2 weeks prior. That led us up to March 12th. So the day of March 12th, I had been out to UPS, their day facility, or their ground facility. After that, we went out to FedEx, and all these places we go, FedEx, UPS. You sign in or you badge your way in. There's cameras. They know when you're there and when you're gone. Right? It's not like it's a loose facility that anybody can come and go from. So we left our FedEx facility at 9:30 because the warrant briefing was at 10 o'clock. I get to the briefing. There's about 50 guys in a room. They go over all the stuff on the board. I happen to take a picture of the board because they said every warrant signed as a no knock, but we're going to do this one, which is the one I had, Breonna Taylor's apartment, as a knock and announce.
Why was that one the exception?
So the whole reason for a no knock, it's not just based on the house. It's mainly based on who you're dealing with. So you've got the suspect and what kind of crimes they have in the past, whether they have video cameras, whether they're part of a criminal syndicate, if they have watchdogs, all these different things, guards at the door, screen doors that are locked, or the security doors. So all those things take into effect. Well, the main thing was Jamarcus Glover was why they got these no knocks, and they had a tracker on his car, they had a ping on his phone, they had eyes on him. They knew at that point he was not going to Springfield that night. He was headed to the trap house. So they made the call to say they were doing the right thing. They said, this no longer fits the parameters of a no knock, even though it's signed as a no knock. We're going to knock and announce. There's probably only paperwork and money there, probably no dope. And so when you get in there, they say, knock. They even said this, which, I tell people to go with your gut. I didn't go with my gut here. I got lazy, I guess. They said, they made this exact statement in the briefing in front of everybody. She's going to be a heavy set black woman. Give her extra time to come to the door, because they wanted her on board, right? They wanted her to testify against Glover to see what they could do. So the plan was go out there and knock, and not just do a normal warrant where you're banging, police search warrant, boom, hit the door, go. And we're also not doing the no knock. Now we're doing basically a courtesy knock where you're knocking, wait, knock, wait until they come to the door. And that was the plan. Obviously, the plan didn't go as we had hoped.
Well, let's rewind for just a second on that because we're talking about Glover. In today, in your mind, and even back then, is there any doubt in your mind that Glover was involved in the trafficking of narcotics with these trap houses and other stuff? Is there any doubt in your mind?
No, they had already served 2 warrants on him. He had been locked up in January of that year of 2020 with, I think, six or seven guns and a bunch of dope, bunch of meth, bunch of heroin. Um, so this guy was a frequent flyer. He had, I think, 5 felony pending cases in circuit court at the time of this warrant. He should have never been out of jail, but they just kept letting him out, letting him out, letting him out. And Breonna's the one that actually bailed him out in January, just 2 months prior to the warrants taking place.
Go ahead, Steve.
I just want to say, I don't want to get into the probable cause associated with getting a search warrant for Breonna Taylor's apartment. And our listeners, if you don't know, we're not trying to crucify Breonna or anybody else on here. We want to give John the opportunity to tell his side of the story because so much rhetoric is out there. But two of the things that stuck out in my mind as I was reading your book is, one, there are video surveillances of Jamarcus Glover going to Breonna's apartment empty-handed and coming out. 2, he's seen in 2 different cars that are registered to Breonna Taylor using her cars. And 3, the address on his driver's license is her address. Is that all right?
The address on his driver's license, her address. The address on his license, her address. His bank account is to her address. His phone bill is to her address. When they bailed him out of jail 2 months prior, he used her address. So everything pointed there. There's nothing from a detective standpoint that you would look back and go, oh, there's no connection,
Right.
anymore. We're seeing him there. We're seeing her drive him down to the trap house. That's on video, her driving him there. So everything points to that. Whether their PC at that time was refreshed enough, that's for a court to decide, not us. But would I've done it different? Possibly. But
Well, a court did decide. A court looked at all of the information and said there's probable cause to issue search warrants.
Yeah, the
Right.
probable cause wasn't the issue. I think the issue was when some of that probable cause took place, whether it was a month ago, whether it was 2 weeks ago, whether it was 2 months ago, whatever it was. So, there was just some mistakes made. But again, you had a very young crew who had just been brought over there. This is their first case. And here's the peculiar part. Okay. So in my book, I talk a little bit about it, where the gentrification of this Elliott Avenue, which is where the trap houses were. I've got a map that was sent out by the mayor's office that showed everything on that street that had been taken by the city, confiscated. They needed these 2 houses that these warrants were going to before they could start development, and the owners wouldn't give them up. Now, I have never seen this in my 21 years on the department. This is the only time I ever saw it. Every Monday, a representative from the mayor's office and 3 of our lieutenant colonels, assistant chiefs, would come into our office and take this crew that was doing this investigation into a room, and they would get updated on where they stood on this, because the mayor's office was pushing this. We got to get this done. This is their first case by this new unit that the mayor's office developed. And now the mayor's office representative is there pushing for information on where do we stand on this? Where do we stand on this? Where are we at? So a lot of man, funny business. It just doesn't add up. Once you're away from it, looking at it, you go, okay, now I understand why the dominoes fell the way they did.
Yeah, there's a lot more in the background of the story that it's not coming to light, and
Yes,
nobody's addressing.
right. And it
It's
falls on
just
deaf
easier to
ears when
throw
you try to give
somebody
it
out
to
there.
people.
Yeah, and it's easier to throw scapegoats out there.
Right. Yeah, they don't want to take responsibility, because then they're held responsible for it, and that's not what they want.
Right.
Yeah, well, that comes from a lack of cojones. When you stand up and go, "Oh yeah, we didn't do it right, or we did it right, and we're holding our ground." But at some point, you got to have faith in your leadership, and that's why I say there's a difference between leaders and managers. And there are people out there who should have never had a supervisory role because they're not leadership material. Um, but hey, rant over on that. Let's go back and talk about that too, just a little bit. Even if it may be just a little old, the fact is it was an ongoing. I mean, you would look at this almost like RICO. It's an ongoing conspiracy. This is stuff that continues to happen. It's not like it only happened once. When you look back at the record, and again, we're not, like Steve says, it's not here to bash people. The thing we want to do is dig into the context. It's so easy to throw out a tweet and put up a Facebook post and take one little piece and make an entire argument around it without having the sophistication to get into the context to say what was going on here, what was happening. So when you look back, like you said, like Steve was talking about in your book, let's just document a little bit more the extent of Breonna Taylor's contacts with Jamarcus Glover. Do you know how long their relationship existed by that point?
I think it was 4 years. I believe that's what it was. It had been off and on for quite a long time. Um, Even a couple of months before, probably about January, when she bailed him out. Kenneth Walker, her current boyfriend at the time, was at her house, and Glover showed up, apparently upset that they were together, or there was some kind of uneasy situation that happened between the two guys and her. And some people, when we get into the story in a little bit, that some people say, well, maybe that's why he thought it wasn't the police at the door, because he had this kind of beef with her boyfriend, who was not a good guy. And he wasn't a good guy himself, but this guy was even a worse guy. And so I don't know, all this stuff plays into it.
Well, let's start talking about that then. So you do all this stuff on the 12th. Walk us through now the next few hours. When do things start coming together and the raid starts getting everybody starts coalescing for the raid?
Yeah, well, I can tell you when things started going bad was right after right after the brief. I go out to my car, I grab the tools, the ram and the pick. I go out to my car, and I've got two flat tires on my driver's side. And I look at the car behind me in the parking lot, and it's got a couple of flat tires. So obviously somebody walked through the parking lot poking tires. So
Did they
now,
know they were cop? Did they know they were cop cars?
yeah, we
Okay.
had no, and this was our complaint for years. We had an open parking lot where the narcs park their cars. That is, the building we use is a adjoining building with other city workers. So everybody knows who we were, and where we're at. So they come by and take pictures of our cars. So it was almost impossible to go do surveillance in certain areas and stuff. Um, but again, that's short sightedness on quote leadership. So after that, now it's starting to rain. I mean, it's pouring down outside. I go in, I can't find a pool car. I'm looking all over the place. The keys are locked up in our the other sergeant's lockbox. So I finally find a car. It's a piece of crap, but I get it. And now I'm kind of rushed, because you do your main brief with everybody, then you go to your secondary location, which is usually about a half a mile from your target area, and you rebrief there to make sure everybody that you've got on your team's on the same page. And so it's raining. I'm moving all my equipment from my car to this pool car. Well, I forget a couple of things. One of them being my tourniquet, because when I didn't have it on my vest, when I wasn't wearing my vest, I had it in my glove box, so I'd have accessibility to it. Second thing I forgot was my extra mag case down on my door, because it was just a paddle that slid in. And so I didn't realize all that until it was time to hit the door, and I'm like, well, I'm screwed now. Let's just do it. But so all that took place. I finally get a car. I get out there. I pull up and I look up at EMS. I'm trying to get their attention. I'm hitting with a flashlight, hitting with the horn. Finally, they look at me, and it's two really young guys. I mean, like my kids' age. And I'm thinking, man, I hope these guys aren't the ones that saved my life if something needs to happen. I even told the guy that I talked to, I said, man, these aren't the guys. They're just not it. You could tell. And so we go and I say, guys, I'll be back. We did our little brief. I went because I wanted to get eyes on this apartment. I'd never seen it. And if I'm the VO, I've got to know exactly which one it is. So there's a guy that's on their team,
What's a VO?
verification officer. It's the guy who sees the door and goes, this is the right door to hit. So the guy who's been on their eye, who's on the actual squad that we're helping out, is watching this apartment. I'll call him on the phone. I pull through. He points me to which apartment it is. There's a plumbing van right outside of it. I can see the door. He tells me which one. So I go back. I tell the guys, let's load up and go. We line up. We wait for SWAT because we were hitting them simultaneously. So when SWAT said we're unloading, that's when we headed our way. And that's what we did. Once SWAT said they're unloading, we pulled up and got out of the car and approached the door. And when we got there, there was a little wrench in it. I pull up and there's a Sequoia parked, a white '04 Sequoia parked right in front of the apartment, but it's perpendicular or parallel to the sidewalk, but perpendicular to the other cars in the parking lot. And the eye didn't tell us that this car had pulled in. So I got on the radio and I'm a little bit mad at this point because it's pretty vital. If a car pulls right in front of your target location, you don't know where that person went.
And you just used the term the eye. You VO is a verification officer. Let people know what the eye is.
The eye is the guy watching the apartment or watching the house during the time leading up to the warrant. So if anybody comes or goes, if anything changes of importance, they let you know. And somehow this wasn't expressed to us what was going on with this vehicle. So I get out and I'm a little mad about that. Not at the person, just at the situation, because you're going into a blind location. I want to know everything I can know about it. So I clear this car. It's empty, but I'm glad that car pulled up. And I'll tell you why in a second. We go up to the door, and this is an 8-plex, okay? You've got 4 doors on the bottom, one on the left, one on the right, and 2 straight back. Same thing up top. There's a metal staircase to the right-hand side, which goes up, and Breonna Taylor's door is right underneath that, apartment 4, right underneath that staircase. Well, the guy who pulled up in that van, fortunately, went up to the upstairs apartment right above hers. And when I go down there, I knock 2 times normal on the door, just normal knocks, hoping she'd just come to the door. Go ahead.
And this is a ground floor apartment, is what you're saying.
Correct. This is ground
Okay.
floor. So I go up and I knock on this door 2 different times, 2 different cadences of knocks, hoping she would just come to the door, doing what they ask us to do. Generally by this time, we're already hitting the door. We're in, we're clearing. We've got the psychological advantage. We're loud. We're all this stuff. So after the 2 regular knocks and she didn't come, we switched it over. Now you've got the police knock on the door, which is an open hand, heavy bang on the door.
And everybody knows what that sounds like. It's
Everybody
like,
knows what
bam,
the
bam,
police
bam,
knock
police
is.
come to the door. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and with that were the verbal commands: police search warrant, come to the door if you're inside, police search warrant. Because when I pulled up, I could see the bedroom light flickering from the TV. So we knew somebody was in there.
But let's be clear about something too, because there's everybody always says, well, you didn't knock and announce. Let's just clear that up. When after your first rounds of polite knocks, let's say, and you went to the cop knock, who was the one issuing the verbal commands? Was that you?
It was me. Yeah.
And no doubt, you were saying it loud enough that
yelling it. Yeah, you're going to hear it, especially through apartment walls. Yeah, you're going to hear it. And there was an additional probably 4 to 5 rounds of that with the open hand and the yelling, because right before we hit the door, the knock before we hit the door, the guy on the Ram, who I was on the left side of the door, he was on the right because it swung from left to right and opened up. He said, hold on, I think I heard somebody. So I stopped what I was doing and I yelled again, police search warrant, come to the door if you're inside. No response. I knocked one more time. And after that, I looked back at my lieutenant and he gave the nod. But before that happened, after I first started the heavy bang, the guy who had pulled up in the Sequoia that went upstairs popped out of that door. He heard us. And there's an argument between him and one of the detectives down below because, they addressed a threat not knowing who he was or what he was doing because he came out yelling. And he was like, what are y'all doing? Leave her alone. All this stuff. And
he was saying, he was yelling at you guys to leave Breonna Taylor alone.
yeah, I don't think he knew her. He was we were being loud.
You were basically the police, and he just wanted you out of there.
Yeah, he was a foreign guy, so there was also a little bit of a disconnect in language. But But they were yelling back and forth. And finally, I looked back at the guy that was doing it because I'm focused here on this door. I can't see him because he's upstairs. This guy back here can see him because he's just to the left or to the right of me where he can see up the steps. And they're getting nowhere with this argument. So I'm banging on the door. I stopped what I'm doing. I said, if he's not a threat, just relax and let it go, because it was distracting everybody on scene. And so he did. The guy went back inside. He left it alone, and we continued doing what we were doing.
So
But
by
the
that,
point,
go ahead,
yeah, the
Steve.
point here is that was loud enough that a man in an upstairs apartment heard you announcing yourselves.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And from the time you started that first knock till the time you said you did your last knock, that guy goes back in. What kind of a time frame are we talking?
It
1
was,
minute, 2
yeah, it was
minutes?
about a minute. Yeah,
Okay.
which at a door feels like an eternity.
It's an
Mhm.
eternity because you
And
don't know what's on the other
yeah,
side of the door.
everything inside my head was going, why are we doing this? This isn't normal. Why are we doing this? Because the last time on a warrant that I changed things up because somebody on scene asked me to, which was another sergeant, I got shot at through the door and almost killed. I got glass covered my body, cut up. The bullet hit about 2 inches behind me in a fence. So I should have known then. When my guts tell me stop doing what somebody else asked me, just stop doing it and do what you're supposed to do. But you try to be cordial. You're the visitor here. You're trying to do what they ask you to do, but it didn't turn out so well. So
Go
so
ahead.
once go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so you've knocked on this door. He goes back in. You've done another knock. What happens at that point?
So then that's when I look back at my lieutenant. He gives me the nod to go ahead because we had knocked, like you said, for about a minute on this door, two normal knocks, probably 4 or 5 different cadences of the loud police search warrant bangs on the door, with no response. So I looked at the guy and I said, go ahead and hit it. The breacher. He hits the door the first time. It hits right on the deadlock, the deadbolt, which that's not going to knock a door open. He just miscalculated. And I remember one of the guys in the stack said, my daughter hits harder than that because, we're always ribbing each other. So there was a little chuckle there. Then he hit it the second time and I could see through the door. The deadbolt was bent and I could see actually into the living room. And then the third time I said, here it goes. And he hit it and the door comes flying open. And at this point, everybody is yelling, police search warrant. Because it's been so ingrained in you. That's what you do. You do the same thing every time.
How
And
many guys in the stack?
there's 7 total, including myself.
So you got 7 people yelling police search warrant because that's like you say, it's psychological, it's overwhelming. You want no doubt that you're the police, that you're there to serve a search warrant because you want compliance.
Yeah, and I didn't want to get shot. I mean, that's the whole point of it. You don't want them thinking you're another drug dealer robbing them. And
Right.
so when this happened, I could see the living room from right to left. I could see the couch. I remember the color. And as soon as I get to the hallway, the door frame, because I was not in the fatal funnel, I was not in the doorway, I was to the left of it. And once my field of vision ran out because of the door frame and the hall wall, I had to step into the doorway and we're yelling police search warrant. And as soon as I took that little right step over, 2 feet, um, and I turn from right to left as my gun light's coming around. I catch Kenneth Walker. Him and Breonna are at the end of this hallway, this narrow, maybe 3-foot hallway, about 30 feet away, and it looked like just one big blob. They were overlapping one another, but one was taller, one was shorter. So your mind's working super quick. I mean, like it's amazing how much the different thoughts that popped into my head at this moment. Like when I turned that corner and saw 2 people there, I said, "This ain't normal. This is different than anything I've ever encountered because usually people are giving up, they're running, they're hiding, they're doing something, they're screaming. They weren't screaming, they were just standing there in wait. And I went, oh crap. And I saw the end of his gun and it was too late. So I saw the silver tip and boom, the shot went off. I never even got over to her. I stopped right there at him. And
So let's stop there for a second because I want to add a little bit more context. How were you dressed that night? What things identified you as a cop?
so I had on plain clothes, but we had our police vest on that said police on the front, police on the back. Yeah, that was one of the huge things. Oh, they were in just regular clothes. Well, sure we were, but we also had an outer carrier over that said police, which is more identifiable than a guy in uniform, in my opinion. You got the little bitty badge here; it doesn't say police on it. So we were all vested up, proper protocol there. And when that door came open, aside from him hearing, aside from seeing us, I don't know what more he needed to visualize that we were the police.
Hey players, that is the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out, as always, on Tuesday. In the meantime, go check us out at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. Also, go check out our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot more information there, including our book list. Any book written by our guests will be listed there. In the meantime, go check us out also, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. It's where we put a lot more content you won't hear on our regular podcast. We go into a lot more topics, and folks, it is a lot of fun. So go check us out, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. In the meantime, everybody stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow for part 2.